We're grateful that you're here tonight.
One of the things that we look forward to every year is having this event, getting to meet all of you. We will say, please don't try this at home.
Winner is number 159.
So much. I stomped that hay right down.
It's so good to be back and be together. Welcome to the 15th Annual Sportsmen's Banquet.
Hey, I know that Pastor Jerry is looking down on us, and he got a big smile. To cheer up the room a little bit, we're going to do an early bird drawing for a gun. Kyle's no stranger to this area. He's been here 1.5 times. Like I said earlier, he did the COVID Sportsman's Banquet in 2020. But he's been here, and we really like the things he had to say then, and looking forward to even better things today. With that, Kyle Randall.
Thank you, boss. I'm going to grab this. Excuse me for turning my back to you. Today we're going to do something brand new to me and hopefully you. So if I stumble through it, I apologize. First of all, there was a really obvious omission in thanks. And I'm going to ask you all to do something, and I hope you aren't offended. Please stand up. Please, all y'all. Now look around the room at every single person wearing an orange vest and give them a standing ovation. They did a tremendous job. This is not easy to do. And I will tell you that this type of community, this type of operation, this type of church community, you are all very, very lucky to have. And speaking of lucky, that's kind of exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. You know, I am a lucky man. I really am. I hear that everywhere I go. And you've probably heard the old saw, if I just had $1 for every time somebody told me how lucky I was, well, if I did, I probably couldn't see you all over the stack of dollars. I am lucky, incredibly lucky. But I've also been around a little, and I've gotten to know over the years what luck is, and kind of sometimes more importantly, what luck isn't. And I will tell you, we're going to have a little video, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And then we're going to have a little, I like to call it an event. Some might call it a train wreck. We'll see. But I want you to keep in mind that term as we go through the evening. Because as outdoor people, we very commonly refer to lucky. And I know what you're about to see is going to pale. I'm embarrassed to show you what I got to show you after we just saw that, because I'll tell you, that's some funny stuff. We do this for a living. February the 1st was our 30th year. If you don't know me, my name is Kyle Randall. Most of you I met out in the hallway. And thank you for your patience for that too. But this really is about being lucky. And that's actually the most commonly asked question I get right after, why do you continually let your wife catch more fish than you? You all do not understand the meaning of the word let.
Well, the story of me
This is what it
now,
takes.
as I stand here, starts with my faith and my family, my wife and children, my grandchildren, and all of our many great friends. Oh, and I'm sure some of you have probably heard I've got a pretty good job, too. as they say. I've been there, done that, and I have the bloody t-shirt and the video to prove it. So I guess you're right. I am a lucky man. But friends, you should know there are all kinds of lucky. There is the luck that you hope and pray for, and sometimes actually have.
My shot angle was slightly blocked by that cow's head, but when she lifted her chin,
There you go. He's down. Holy, let me set this down. Look, oh.
Getting an archery bull elk is very lucky, but there's the kind of luck too that puts an even bigger one right in front of you not 30 seconds after you shot the first.
every fiber of my body, every sinew was on fire. There was an absolute monster bull elk right there, right in front of me. But unfortunately, I know I have to pass on that shot.
Now that kind of luck, well, we don't really want to talk about it. What I do want to talk about is how everyone just knows that fishing is all about luck. Like your grandson asking to use your fly rod and then he hooks up the big one with it.
He had asked to use my fly rod because I had caught a couple of fish on it with the fly I was using, so I said, yeah, if you think that's the secret, go ahead.
Is this fish wearing you out, buddy?
No, not yet.
You won't have to go to practice today.
I think
Have a workout right here in the river. Look at that. Nice fish, dude.
Thank you.
I tell you, they're just slamming that streamer. Huge smallies. I don't know how it gets much better.
I don't know.
Yes, he made it work, but friends, there's luck, and then there's luck. Like me using his fly, the one that he said didn't work.
Look at that. Bunch of old
If you're a
sparkling
granddad,
laundry
you owe
hanging
this
out
to
of
your
his face.
grandchildren.
Pretty sure that's your fly, isn't it?
It is.
That's that one you said they wouldn't hit?
Yep.
Damn, big boy. Look at the size of that fish. Wow. Look at that, buddy. That is a beast of a fish. I can't. Every time I think I got him, he goes the other way.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see, can I get him? Look at that smallmouth. That's 10 pounds of smallmouth, buddy. Look at that thing.
No, he didn't see that coming. But speaking of the lucky lure, what about when you buy a brand new bait to take on a trip and then catch a dandy of a fish with it?
This thing is so wide. We're gonna try him one time for the kids at home. Look at there. Oh, that's a horse. That fish weighs 20 plus pounds.
Oh yeah.
It's 40 some inches long. I don't know how big, but
That's certainly some luck. But what about when you hand that very same lure to your friend and he catches something else?
Unless he's swimming towards the boat.
That's almost as good as the one I caught.
Yeah.
It might be an inch longer.
Okay, you're done.
Does he know that?
Don't ever do this, young people.
Memo on that.
Look out, look out, look out.
Yes, we did get a little lucky. It only took me an hour to get all those hooks out of Eric, and he did live to fish another day. Friends, I will tell you though, if you're going to fish and hunt on TV for 30 plus years, well then you had better be real lucky.
And you should know that if you are real lucky and you wind up in a situation like this one,
well, then you're going to have to make choices. It's a $3,000 hunt that's down to its last 24 hours, and this buck is working his way in. So lucky. What are you going to do? If you do shoot and you're lucky enough to harvest, are you then satisfied? If you pass, what then? If you go home empty-handed, how's that feel? One more step and he's in your shooting lane. You're out of time. You've got to decide. What's it going to be? I'd come a long way. But yeah, I decided to pass. Now, is that lucky? And if it isn't, well, friends, how do you then explain something like this? The very next day after passing on that 8-point, I kept looking. I couldn't see anything, but I knew I heard something walking in the water. And then, game on. Here was a dandy buck. He had crossed the creek and now he was up looking around. This was definitely a shooter. Now all we needed to do was get him around in front of us. He started working his way in toward my scent trap, and at the first opening I got ready to shoot. Only we were having a little bit of trouble getting the camera on him, so I let him go through that opening, adjusted my sight, drew my bow, and he stopped behind some brush. I held it until finally I had to let it down, and of course, he moved through.
Yeah, I know it's never happened to
Let him go
you.
a little farther, adjusted again, grunted again, but he never stopped. I drew my bow and I tried him again, but he still wouldn't stop. I had to let it down again. He was making the turn, but if he got past that last group of trees, he was going to be out of range. I told Dave, just wide out the camera and put it out there straight ahead of us. Nailed him right there.
Awesome.
He's right. He skipped over and hit the dirt right there. Holy smokes, I thought he was. Did you see that?
Oh, boy.
I thought he was going to duck that arrow. When he was right here, yeah, he's done. He's done. He ain't going nowhere.
No, that's cool.
Oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord Jesus.
Prayers answered.
Yeah, you had prayers and prayers. Oh, my goodness. That is a gorgeous buck on a beautiful day. What do you think, Dave?
I think that's an awesome buck.
Yes, friends, if you want to be me, it pays to be lucky. It's just the truth of it. And I have to tell you, that's all I thought it was for a long time. But somewhere, I don't know, 10, 20 years into what I do, it occurred to me that something else was going on, and not just because of what I do. And I'm going to try to illuminate that for you all tonight. And I'm going to ask a couple of the fellas from the church to help me. And the only prerequisite for this job is you have to have a loud, clear voice and you have to be able to read. So if we can get just a couple of you, 2 or 3 of you to come up, I'm just going to have you read some for instances for me, and I think you'll begin to get the idea of what I'm talking about. Now, these are I'll let them introduce themselves. You are?
Matt Mullador.
And you are?
Tristan Cole.
Tristan Cole, and you're going to come up. Whoop, we got another one. And you are?
Rusty Powers.
And you all can read. There it is. They got the job. You got up here first, so you're going to read that first for me, if you would, pretty please. You're going to read that second. I'll read this one. It's kind of long. If you would, we'll read this one fourth. But I'm going to give you the mic, and if you would, just read what it says there, and bear in mind why we're doing this. These are all situations from research that I've been a part of and done, and they're all instances where, on the surface, people's lives were being affected basically by chance, by luck.
A 15-year-old wild deer hunting in November with some friends slid down a snow-covered log into the Black River After being washed swiftly downstream, he was saved by getting caught up in a piece of old barbed wire fence that was dangling into the water from a fence post on shore, where after pulling himself out and suffering from hypothermia, he was able to walk out in the darkness on the wrong side of the river to a distant yard light at an unknown neighbor's home. Interestingly, he shot his first buck ever the very next day using a borrowed gun while wearing borrowed clothes and boots that didn't fit.
I think we'd all agree that's kind of lucky, sort of. You know, I don't care what it took. I bet you most of you, if you hunt, remember your first deer. Hopefully. Hopefully. I'm giving you a hard time. You ready?
I'm ready. Number 2, a 17-year-old was in the front seat, was a front seat passenger in a one-car rollover accident where the driver was killed, but the 17-year-old crawled out the crushed wreck unharmed.
I think we can agree that's definitely a different kind of luck, but it's certainly lucky. And I'm going to read this, and some of the terms in here may not be real clear to y'all. Those of you that were in the military probably a little bit more, but either way I got this one. A 19-year-old corporal, while on active duty in the United States Army, was injured in an explosion of 10 daisy cutters. Daisy cutters are what's known in the modern vernacular as the mother of all bombs. They're 15,000-pound bombs filled with buckshot used for clearing helicopter landing pads. The blast leveled buildings, destroyed vehicles, including flatbed trucks, one of which dislodged an Honest John nuclear warhead and sent it rolling down a road. Fearing the blast had been a nuclear explosion, nearly all of the military personnel and area civilians deserted their post. The corporal, one of only 12 Army Special Escort Forces that remained on site, with 2.5 years in service, was left by default as the senior ranking man on scene and was forced into being the site commander, the NCO in charge of the only real broken arrow incident, an at-risk nuclear weapon ever declared in the United States. Now, I'm not sure what kind of luck that is, but almost as traumatic to me was the rest of the story that 3 days later, that very same corporal, after having many large pieces of shrapnel removed and his wounds treated at an Army hospital, laid for hours on a kitchen table in his underwear while his then fiancée and her mother, his future mother-in-law, took tweezers and magnifying glasses and picked smaller parts of shrapnel from him. Unfortunately, some of that shrapnel remains in him to this day. Could you imagine, guys, laying in front of your future mother-in-law on her table? I don't know what kind of luck that is, but I know we're gonna do a couple more of these. You ready?
A 24-year-old struck by a 1.5-ton work truck in Susanville, California, suffered a broken neck, jaw, and right shoulder. With his head bolted into a metal halo, he was declared permanently disabled by the California State Medical Board, leaving him legally unable to work anywhere in the state.
Now, on the surface, that didn't seem like a very lucky thing to me, the way I heard it. But then I realized that was a good reason to leave California. Gentlemen, thank you. I'll do the rest of these. We don't want to take too much time. We're going to get to some of the other festivities. But I want you to hear these, and again, I want you to think about the fact that this is really luck, or as some people see it, luck. A 35-year-old was crushed by a truck transmission and transfer case while helping a co-worker who claimed he had already secured it to the jack. He suffered a broken right shoulder and collarbone and was forced to return to work the next day one-handed. A 35-year-old and his wife nearly drowned in an early April canoeing accident. And after reviving his wife laying in the snow unconscious in a mid-river island, they were forced to wade out across an ice-filled river with her tied to him with his belt. A 39-year-old suffered third-degree burns on both his legs and feet from 400-degree oil spill. And then, because of their distance to a facility for medical help, was forced for 2 weeks to pick dead flesh from his own burn wounds twice a day. A 40-year-old was struck by lightning for the second time. After being struck in the back of a pickup truck, he was knocked down by a bolt of lightning in the pond next to their house while his wife and 3 daughters watched out their dining room window. And there's many, many of these. I'll read 1 or 2 more. A 42-year-old fell 20 feet from a tree stand, breaking 5 ribs and splitting his sternum, crushing 2 vertebrae, and then crawled out of the woods a half a mile on his hands and knees when rushed to the hospital only to be sent home from the emergency room with an undiagnosed punctured left lung. He passed out. His wife found him sideways, slumped in a chair, bleeding from the mouth, and ran him back to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery, but unfortunately he lost most of the use of his left lung. A 44-year-old during a hunt was charged while tracking a friend's wounded bear. Fortunately, he was able to shoot the bear and finished it. The bear died and measured exactly 5 1/2 feet from him. A 49-year-old was electrocuted and burned while helping his son-in-law. Nobody in here's got a son-in-law, right? Okay. No men in here are son-in-laws. You a bunch of liars. Every one of you is just like me. At any rate, a line that was supposed to be disconnected by his son-in-law at the meter. He lost all motor functions, including control of his bowels, even his eyesight and hearing, for over 20 minutes. And I'm not going to keep going, but to be honest with you, these are things that, well, I'll read this one. A 57-year-old struck head-on by a texting driver during a snowstorm. The driver in a full-size Chevy Suburban crossed the center line and struck their pickup at over 50 miles an hour. After his son-in-law freed him from their own wreck, he was able to use strips of his T-shirt and his belt to fashion 2 tourniquets and 1 shoelace to fashion the third, and managed to keep the driver alive until he was medevaced by helicopter from the wreck. Friends, I know this sounds like it's kind of improbable that you would run across that many people, and there's about 15 more things here, but I'm not going to read them. It's kind of unbelievable that you'd find that many people with this many situations that have happened. And when you think about luck, good and bad, you think, well, did that really happen? How would you find that many people to find that many traumatic stories? I mean, there's another one where a fellow was a 52-year-old was a boat passenger on the English River doing 40 mile an hour. The boat driver struck a submerged log and flipped him 8 feet in the air, and the boat behind him saw that the passenger was able to reach back and grab the boat driver out of the air and pull his face away from the spinning propeller that was now upside down inside their boat. That's pretty lucky. But the truth of the matter, the reality of this is that I can attest to all these things happening because they didn't happen to a group of people. Every one of those things happened to me. Every one of them and a whole bunch more. Now, I said at the beginning I knew what luck was and more importantly what it isn't. And if you're sitting there wondering, why did I ever come into a room with that guy? That's a pretty fair question. I've got 126 identifying marks on my body. I have scars, and interestingly, I never become ill. As far as catching a cold or COVID or any of those, I never become ill. But I've been in car wrecks and bomb explosions. I have been shot. I have been stabbed. I have been run over. Just 3 years ago, I was in Sault Ste. Marie getting gas at a Holiday gas station. And a C60 Chevy straight truck jumped the curb, came across the lawn, dug its front tires in, coming right at the gas pump that I'm filling up at, buried in the mud, and stood, imagine, that entire truck right straight up in the air. Fell over on its top, and then the load in it shifted and it rolled back over on its wheels. Now, credit where credit's due, that Chevy diesel is kept right on running. The very heavily injured and unconscious driver was pinned in the cab. I yelled at my wife, and she very kindly grabbed the young person in the gas station with his family next to us, and I chased down that truck, jumped on the running board, and through the broken window was able to steer that truck across 4 lanes of traffic and crash it into a parking lot where thankfully none of us was hurt, and that guy lived. Now to me, that's not lucky unless you're that guy. Unless you're the little girl in the front seat of the car we passed as we went across the road that I could see so close I could see that she had little sparkles in the rim of her pink eyeglasses. That's a lot of near misses for one fella. And before you ask me, no, I don't know why. I wish I did. One of the things in my life that I can honestly say as I age is I would just as soon be, this is a strange word, but I'm going to use it, normal. I really would. But that's not my lot in life, apparently, and I've asked many times. The last thing I'm going to tell you about, if you don't believe I understand the difference, is a 64-year-old man, 1 year and 1 week ago to this day, suffered a debilitating double stroke that left the entire left side of his body fully paralyzed. Unable to move his left arm or leg, see from his left eye, and unable to properly breathe through a non-functioning diaphragm. He couldn't speak, couldn't control his bodily functions, and he laid in intensive care waiting to undergo emergency brain surgery that they said he had a 50-50 shot of surviving, just getting off the table. Well, he survived that surgery, and he was told that after another week or 10 days in intensive care, that he would be moved to a regular room, and when able and safe, they would move him to Mary Freebed Rehab Hospital, where he would spend a number of months trying to relearn how to use the function of at least some of his faculties. 4 days later, that same individual, shakily, ugly, and with a walker, got up out of that hospital bed and went home. I know that's true because that too was me. Now I live every day waiting for the next one because they told me that's the way it is. And if any of you have had a loved one that's ever been afflicted, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I didn't spend the time in the chair and in the rehab that so many have suffered. I went home. And I finished this season. If you're a viewer, a regular frequent flyer, you know we made a full season of shows this year. Every one of those programs was made after I had the stroke. Is that luck? I don't know. Didn't feel lucky. Didn't look lucky. But I knew so many that had it worse than I did and still do. And I'll tell you, I'm still working. There's no lie. Still very unsteady on my feet. Can't possess the stamina that I once had, but I'm still here. Just like all of those other things that happen. And the biggest thing I guess I want you to understand about that is many of you won't agree with me about everything. No, people don't. But I think you'll accept the notion that in our world, God is under attack. It's not fashionable. You start talking to somebody about faith and they get real queasy. Now, there are any number of people wherever I go that will jump up and testify that they saw an alien walking their Bigfoot away from their parked spacecraft to check on a haunted house and take pictures of ghosts. But you ask them about God and they look at the ground, then they hem and they haw and they change the subject. People very often have said to me, well, God is kind of hard to quantify. To which I say, no. People's excuses to avoid God are almost unquantifiable. So what I'm going to invite you to do is consider this. You don't have to believe in God because I believe. You don't. You absolutely do not have to believe in miracles because I believe. What you do have to do while you search science for all the answers for the things that you can't grasp is accept that right here, right now, in this town and in this building, there is the most mathematically undefinable, 1,000,000,000 to 1 long shot, luckiest man in the world. Now, do you believe that? You heard just a few of the things that have happened in my life. You didn't hear how at 14 years old I was thrown out in the street by my stepfamily, that I was Michigan's first legally emancipated minor. You think that's lucky? Try and get a phone in your name at 14 in 1969. It's not. But I'm still here. I know I'm not a monkey. I'm a God-created being. And you either have to accept that the odds, I should have won every lotto in the world. There's somebody in this room that got an elk tag. I think it's mine. It's not luck. Consider the basic reality. Just do the numbers. Like the kids say, my kids say, do the math. You can't put a number big enough on it to come up with even a tenth of this stuff happening to one person, let alone that person surviving it. If for some reason you think that you want to live a better life, if you believe there's a second chance, if you desire just to give to your next generation, then my advice is real simple. Stand up. Stand up for what you know and believe. And I don't mean just stand up in church when everybody else does. Stand up and fight for our world. And I mean fight like the third tiger on the ramp going into the ark. You know what I'm saying? This is your shot. That's what I'm doing here. I never intended to be here. I never intended to do this. I intended the life in the military till they blew me up. I intended to run my own mechanic shop till I got run over. My neck got broke and the state of California put bolts in my head and said, you can no longer legally work in this state. You are disabled. I had to leave California. This is never where I thought I'd be. And yet here I am. And friends, I can't tell you how many times in my life when these things have happened, when I've come that close to the edge, and I have been to the edge. I've peered over into the nothingness and had no way to excuse my presence there, let alone what I did. I've been there, and I've been right here. And I want you to know that I won't ever admit to anyone that I deserve it. And I'll never deny my faith or the fact that Jesus Christ saved me and I never deserved it. I never felt that lucky. I'll never make that statement. But I want you to know that one of the very last things all of my life I have met, and it happened today. We did a show, I don't know if some of you saw it, about the fact that I had a stroke. Some of you may be ahead of the rest of the class. But the person that was talking to me, just like my wife has said, like, I can't tell you the thousands of people that have told me every time one of these things has happened in my life, well, God's just not ready for you yet. You ever hear that before? You ever hear somebody say that? I've said it. You ever heard that? God's not ready for you yet. Well, I'm pretty slow. I'm just a dumb country boy. It took me nearly dying dozens of times over to realize it's not true. I honestly believe in my heart I wasn't ready for God yet. That's why I'm still here. I don't have any magic dust. If you're suffering, I don't have a pill to give you or a doctor to send you to. I can't tell you why I deserve this and maybe some others don't, other than to tell you I wasn't ready for God yet. After my stroke, what it took to come back to see where you are right here, that made me understand so clearly. I prayed for 6 hours and 21 minutes by the clock in order to do this. That right there. And when I finally did, it burned like somebody held a torch in my arm. And I cried, and then I screamed, and then I cheered. And when the nurses, the poor people at Butterworth, I feel so bad. They found me. I'm going to get out of here, but I'm going to tell you this. After I figured out how to move that finger, I screamed and cheered because I could feel something. An hour before that, you could have put a 16-penny nail through my left arm or leg, through the left side of my face, and I wouldn't have noticed. I could feel it burnt. I'm here to tell you it burnt, but I was happy. I could feel. One of the things that brought me to this conclusion, and the only reason I'm sharing this with you tonight, is because in that condition, and I'm not afraid to tell you, one of the issues I had is I kept wetting the bed. I couldn't control myself. Now I'm a little old or a little young to wet the bed. I haven't decided which. But it is not socially acceptable for a 65-year-old man to do so. I watched when they would come in and they would pick me up, and it took a bunch of very good people to pick me up, move me over, clean me up, change the bed, put me back in it. And is there anybody in nursing here? Anybody at all? What is with walking into the room every 45 minutes and saying, "Are you all right? I hope you're getting some sleep." What's about that? All right, cut it out. And that happened to you? You go to this house and you say, "Now we want you to get some rest. We're going to turn the lights down, keep everything quiet." 45 minutes later, "Mr. Randall, are you sleeping?" "Not now." Is that you like sit out there in the nurse's station going, 2 out of 3, I go. It's a game, ain't it? Well, I got even for all of us. But more importantly, I got enlightenment. Enlightenment that I didn't even possess, because I was so embarrassed to have these fine young people keep coming in and having to clean me up that I watched out of this eye, because this eye kept looking over here. It was just like, "No, I don't see you." But this eye, I was paying attention. And I watched how they shut the alarms off on this machine that was sitting there beeping my life away. And then I saw at the end of the bed, they opened a panel and there was alarms there too. That monitored whether or not I was moving, or if they were afraid I was going to flop out of the bed, I guess. So when they left the last time, I pulled myself with my right arm down to the end of the bed and I shut the alarm off. Then I shut the machine off. And then I flopped out on the floor and I crawled on my right side, you know, kind of like a fish trying to get across the bottom of a hot aluminum boat, all the way to the bathroom, pulled myself up by the side of the sink so I could go to the bathroom. I got away with it 3 times. The 4th time, about 4:30 in the morning, this fine young man comes in. Mr. Randall, are you sleeping? And of course I didn't answer. I'm in the bathroom. I heard him. And it's, Mr. Randall? Bing, on come the lights. Mr. Randall, are you all right? I could hear him walk by the bathroom door, over to the bed. And in my mind, he's like, where'd that little bugger go? You know, he's looking all over the place. And now he's panicking. He hits mashes the emergency button because I'm not there. So finally I have to do something. I'm in the bathroom, I'll be right out. I'm a stroke victim that can't move. And he goes, oh, okay, for about 3 seconds. And then he goes, you're where? Runs over, opens the door, and I'm laying on the floor looking up at him. Hey, Jim. He said, there's people coming. You can't be, I'm going to get fired. I said, look, I'll make you a deal. Help me get back into bed. I don't tell, you don't tell. You keep your job, I don't wet the bed. Good? He looked at me and he goes, good. From that moment on, I knew there was a God and he loved me. And it sounds crazy, folks, but it's true. It isn't luck. There isn't that much luck in the world. Do I wish these things had quit happening to me? You bet. I drove down the side. Anybody ever been over Medicine Bow Pass? You know where that is over the Rocky Mountains? About 8,900 feet. You been there? I brought my wife and eldest daughter, then just a baby, home from the military, driving a 26-foot U-Haul truck over that pass, towing the family car behind me. Just after we got past the Lincoln Head pull-off, you know where that's at? The rest stop at the top of the mountain? Big Lincoln Head, state of Illinois didn't want anymore because it wasn't fashionable. So the guy took it and put it in the rest stop. We hadn't passed that by a half a mile, and a fire started underneath the dash of that Ford truck I was running, and all the lights went out. And I reached up under the dash and ripped the headlight switch out of them, and if any of you ever had an old Ford pickup or their bigger trucks, they had terrible problems with their headlight switches catching fire. I burned the heck out of my hand, but I managed to get it ripped out, and then it occurred to me there's no way to have lights. It's 11:30 at night. I've got my wife and a baby in the front seat of a truck towing a car in the dark down a mountain. Not a good idea on the surface. Stopping, not an option. They do have emergency pullouts. Couldn't see them. So we drove all the way to Laramie, Wyoming with the windows rolled down, listening to the gravel outside of the truck. The amazing part of this story, that baby never cried in 2.5 hours. Not one peep. We made it into Laramie. I hot wired the headlights together and I drove into North Platte. They told me they couldn't get me a switch. Started the truck up. I drove nonstop from North Platte, Nebraska, all the way back to Michigan. Swore I'd never leave here. I lied then and I'm still leaving. But I keep coming home. And it's because of folks like you that I live here, and I appreciate every minute of your time. Thank you very much.